you can just introduce yourself.
Okay.
In terms of who you are, and yeah, what you do, your profile basically.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Who are you? I've seen on the list there's something written, who is Lara Johnstone, you see, but I'd just like to hear it from you now.
Oh my goodness, I'm not going to go into all that.
Yeah, no, don't. Don't. Just basically, just for even people who are...
Okay, I'm Lara Johnstone, and that's my mother and father. I've been involved in the AIDS issue probably in South Africa now since, what, 2002. It's more a holistic issue in terms of not just finding out who created it, but why they created it, so that we can address the holistic solution, so that not more AIDS viruses are created or different types of viruses like that. I don't really know. I'm not. What would you like? What kind of specifics would you like?
Basically, are you involved with any organizations, basically?
I am not. I have reached out to organizations in South Africa, a lot of AIDS organizations, in fact, over 350 of them, including the AIDS Law Project, Zaki Ahmad's, TAC. There's a list of about 350 AIDS organizations that I have, but they are not willing to address the causes. They want to address the symptoms usually, and they say it's better to just resolve the symptoms, like the George Business Chamber of Commerce. I imagine it's fear or paranoia, but I can't speak for their intentions of why they avoid in my opinion, the origins.
So how did you get involved with the research on this HIV and AIDS issue?
I read about it when I was still in America. I was involved in a lot of prison activist issues. My husband is in prison in California, and I was involved in another issue on a bunch of military disclosure, people who wanted the Disclosure Project, and I wrote a letter to Archbishop Tutu to ask him if he would support disclosure and honesty on this issue, and he said his response was that white people don't have the will to help Africa, and I was a bit blown away by that, and so I thought, well, I have the will, but we cannot address solutions if we don't accurately address the problem and where the problem came from. And not long after I came back, that was one of the issues. I mean, there are many factorial causes. That's one that comes up that I remember right now. And I wrote a letter to President Mandela years ago when I was involved in political prisoners in America, because not a lot of South Africans know how many American political prisoners helped to overthrow apartheid. And those prisoners are still in prison.
Like your husband, you said?
No, he wasn't involved, but Jan Laman, there are a bunch of people who are political prisoners who were on the South African issue, and they are forgotten. And I think that's rude, at the very least.
So through the information you are reading, you believe that AIDS is genocide, is a genocide plan?
Yes, I believe it's a depopulation. It was intentionally created as an opportunity to depopulate, to address a population problem via depopulation instead of addressing it via education. But I also that some of those people did attempt to address it via education, but they were accused of being racists at the Bucharest Conference on Population in 1974. And so it is my opinion that, and from reading after that, Nixon and in the 70s, that they decided then to address the population issue by biological warfare. And that, yes,
So, who exactly is responsible in terms of which governments, who basically?
Well, I think there's a lot of governments. The United States created it, but a lot of governments knew that it was being created, and a lot of people subsequent. There's a principle in Black's law that if you know about a crime or what is considered to be a crime subsequent to the fact, and you do support it, and you do not endorse it, or that you are as guilty or reasonably as guilty as those who created it or who were involved. And so I am. The United States created it. The World Health Organization called for its creation. So there are a lot of people involved, whether they were actively participant in creating it, but who knew that it was being created. I don't think we can just accuse America. That would be unfair.
And then there's no specific scientists, maybe, or doctors that you would know
Yes.
that were responsible.
Yes, Dr. Gallo and the National Cancer Institute were, in 1969, they called for $10 million in the United States Congress. There's a congressional record of where they requested $10 million for the creation of an immune-destroying virus. And that $10 million was created, and from that $10 million, the scientists, one of which was Dr. Gallo, there were a couple of scientists, I can't remember their names, but the experiments and all who was involved is public knowledge.
And in terms of the South African government, how involved is our government in all of this? You know, for example, I know about Dr. Death, that's what they call him.
Yes.
You see, like, you know, and we know that he was involved in biowarfare also during apartheid times. So I would just have an interest in terms of
Yes,
how involved were we in this?
I think we were involved, and certain military intelligence friends that I have admitted that they knew at that point in time. I don't know if you've read those documents. Yes, that they did know that it was being created. They did know why it was being created, and at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, 34 of those boxes of the biological warfare documents were hidden and have still not been disclosed. That they were I just read a news article today where they mention it again, but yes, that the new government has been party in covering it up. Whether they intentionally know the contents of what they're covering up, they certainly are not interested in finding out, or in encouraging the disclosure thereof. So you can conclude that they are intentionally hiding it, or I don't know.
So the content of the documents, because you sent documents to them also, informing about them. Well, just speak on that, you see, in terms of the content of these documents, you see.
Yes, the documents were the documents. I sent them the appropriations hearings where they called for the $10 million. I sent them the National Cancer Institute's documents where they show how all the viruses were mixed, the leukemia viruses from sheep and from cattle, and the Visna viruses and the herpes viruses, so that when these viruses are mixed and then cultured and then added to the vaccinations, then that's how it became a sexual disease in terms of spreading via sexual content. And so to go back to the documents, there's a whole list of documents showing how it was created and opinions on. There are some who say that it could have been probable. Even Dr. Gallo, the person who was involved in these experiments, admitted that it was not possible, but probable, that it could be that AIDS could have come from that. But getting anyone to further investigate it in terms of a government level has not been possible.
Here in South Africa, could you just mention maybe any names of the people you sent these documents to? Like, just a few. No, I know there's a list of them, but just maybe.
Okay, I've sent it to every single AIDS organization that I'm aware of, from the AIDS Law Project, TAC, every AIDS. Then I've sent it to Madiba, former President Nelson Mandela, Archbishop Tutu, President Mbeki. I've had conversations with his office with Beki Khumalo, asking whether that can be resolved through disclosure and honesty. And every political party, Tony Leon has been the only political party that has responded, and they are to be tested. Hopefully he will testify that their opinion is that, irrelevant of where it comes from, that they are willing to address that. But sure, I've sent it to every single political party, the Minister of Health, Shalabalam Simang, who are under the media. Yes.
In terms of Because I know that none of them responded except for Tony Leon.
One other, the Surgeon General of the South African Defence Force. I sent it to him. He said that there was an investigation, but they could not find anything in the in the South African Defence Force, which I don't believe, because the document he said to me was top secret and restricted. I put it up on the web, and he said that they do not comment on opinions, which is a political response.
Why do you think they respond in this way?
The military are supposed to, is more a political problem as far as and they don't want to, it's controversial. I mean, it is very controversial. People do not want to, I can only speculate on their reasons, but that's what I imagine is why they don't want to go there. It's easier to just address the symptoms, and let's not address the causes. I don't know, but I can't speak for them what their personal motives are, which is.
And then, do you think it's in terms of the public interest to know this kind of information? Don't you think maybe the main reason why they are hiding it's because maybe it will spark something amongst the nation? Once people know that, hey, well, we are being killed, yes, systematically. Don't you think maybe that's why in terms of...
Yes, I think if the information is released, how it is released is a very important factor. That certain people could release it, could use it in an accusatory tone, and certain people could, some people could get very upset about it. That is very, very valid. Yes, I do think. But those who do know and those who do suspect, I mean, you can either attempt to address the problem. We shouldn't call ourselves, in the first instance, if we're not going to address the problems, a democracy. Then we must just pretend that we've just swapped one slave master for another, of secrecy and lies, because what they use against black people now, or these people now, they can use against someone else in the next instance. And it breeds paranoia. I mean, how do you feel as a black person, and this is being done and no one's speaking out? Not your own black leaders, or I can speak for my own opinions, and I hear what you're saying there, that is an important issue, but I still don't think you solve a problem without addressing its cause.
No, I also agree with you that definitely we can't address it by attending the causes, you see. In terms of the court case, you see, the one you are attending today, can you say something about that?
Well, it got to the point where I'd been doing this for from 2002 until 2007, which was 5 years. I'd sent it to everybody, and I finally I'd had enough. I was just, this is it. And so I filed a withdrawal of the appeal, and I thought, I'm going to send these documents all to the United States military, to the Judge Advocate General's office, and they can know that somebody did attempt to resolve it by truth and reconciliation, by an honest way. And I sent the documents to Mrs. De Lille on behalf of the South African government. She was representing the South African government in that opinion, in that legal document. And I said to her, can she respond by the 18th, should the South African government wish to address this problem in a responsible manner, in a way of really standing for what we pretend to. And that's when she slammed the phone down on me. I called her, I said, Mrs. De Lille, there's important documents for you. She said, I take care of one AIDS baby. I said, this is about millions of people, and if we don't talk about these things openly and honestly, and we address the causes, and then afterwards she slammed the phone down, and then I got very angry with her, and I sent her the things, because I think she's intentionally being a hypocrite on the issue, and so that's what this case is about. And then she filed Crimen Injuria. To give her the benefit of the doubt, I don't know whether she has intentions of using the case to bring the information out. She may have, it may just be a vindictive Crimen Injuria, or she may have that concern. give her that benefit of the doubt.
What are your expectations from the case in terms of, you say maybe she might be using the case to reveal the information. What about your side?
Oh, yes.
Themselves, so they use this opportunity to reveal it.
Well, I mean, one of my things, yes. One of my issues was in terms of revealing it through a trial, there's a slower procedure that the information gets revealed in a way that could avoid what you were saying. You know, people just hear, and it's and so when you hear the reasons, and you may be able to get a different perspective on it, and we can create a dialogue on issues, because we cannot, I mean, if you've got 5 acres, you can have 20 cows. You cannot have 200. We have to have a population policy in terms of the resources that we have for the country. We cannot breed like we do. And giving, you know, breeding, we have homeless people and children when you cannot afford them. We have to help women, to teach women and men to bring children into the world out of love. Not because your culture from 200 years or whatever said breed because you have a lot of children, that's wealth. Yes, then, but not now. I don't think. We live in different society. We cannot, and so we need to have a conversation of so that's hopefully some of the attempts that I attempt to bring into that conversation. Those are my opinions. I'm not saying that that's necessarily the truth. But there's a big fear amongst white people, and let's be honest, that and we cannot say anything because then you're a racist. But you can only help so much as well, and that's so. Whether that offends someone, and I imagine some of that may offend some people. I listen to their offenses. And we have a dialogue of finding a way that agrees for both people.
And then, what can you say maybe to young people like us, you know, young black people like us, you know, students, if we come across this information, like, what can you say, what, you know, any word you can just say to us, even the parents, anything you can just say to us. Because it's like new information, this, and it's serious information also, you see. We don't take it lightly, you see. We take it very seriously, you see. And we'd like to know, for example, what can you say to us, you see, as one of the people the person who is an activist, you see, on this issue, you see.
If your concern is for this issue, my opinions is the only way we really can address this is the way that we're going, that what you have done, from my perspective, is and if we go together on this issue and follow the conversation wherever it goes on your concerns, is don't think that you're going to run into a bunch of people who are concerned about the issue. I think that I don't know how Madiba feels, but there are certain politicians now who are as happy about secrecy as they were before under apartheid. I think we need to be realistic in terms of who leaders are who may be interested. I was ready to give up. Hey, I'd like to give you hope, but the last thing I want to give someone is false hope, because that was some of the things that hurt to me, was thinking this person cares, and you see them on television and they're talking about justice and the stuff, and then you write them letters and letters, and you go and see them and you go on hunger strikes. I mean, I've been on 3 hunger strikes, and so I'd love to say, brother, we're going to do it, but I'd be lying and the last thing I want to do is tell you something that if the issue does and if there is a conversation created and we can create something wonderful, but it's going to take hard work, it's going to take pain, it's going to take confronting and being hurt by things and opinions that people say, And those are things that we have to have a commitment to, which I feel that you have, towards love, hope, and peace. But
it's just something that came to my mind. I don't know, in terms of, is there any kind of link or maybe anything maybe you can say in terms of, I remember that Thabo Mbeki and Mantum Simang were reluctant to use ARVs. You see, for example, there is a tease in Nevirapins for giving them out to the public. Because I think they were notified. I think I came across some documents. I think it's Dr. Brink. I'm not sure specifically, but it's revealing about the toxic. You know that these are very toxic. You know, things. Is there any link with with all of this?
From what I've read, but I'm not a doctor, and there are certain doctors who are paid by pharmaceutical companies who will tell you what pharmaceutical companies want you to know. And there are certain doctors, like I've taken Dr. Horowitz as a much more ethical doctor, because he's not afraid, and he's not being paid by any pharmaceutical company to tell you what they want you to hear, which is the DVDs that I gave you. But from what I've read, is that they are toxic, that they might help for a little bit, and depending on where if you have AIDS, when you take AZT, it will hasten it's worse for your metabolism. So I think I wouldn't criticize Thabo Mbeki, and I never did on AZT, because in my opinion, he was right. I also think that his way of saying AIDS does not exist was an attempt to create a question of where does, how can you say it doesn't exist, that it was so out there. I don't think that's what he really believes. I just think that that's what he did as a politician, to create such an absurd statement how can you, to make people think about of what, that's my opinion. I can't say what his whole, but when I thought about it, I thought, what are you trying to say here, Mr. Mbeki? So I don't know. I do know when I called Mandela's office, but I didn't speak to him personally, because you cannot speak to him personally. I spoke to his spokesperson. The information she gave me was that they are aware of all this AIDS documents. Now, I don't know whether she understood what she was telling me, because I said to her, and but that's in her responses also. The only organization that said that they would not comment immediately on the documents was the military. They said, we're not going to say anything until we see the documents. And the others all said, no, that's crazy. No, that's so. Be prepared. People are going to tell you you're crazy. You're paranoid. You're and certain people will attempt to get your character assassination so that other people won't listen to you, because they're afraid. I think of. I mean, do you want to know that someone's trying to kill you? You'd rather think that it's a strange disease. But my opinion is, sometimes people tell me that it's racist to say, then I think, isn't it racist to tell someone that you got a disease because some people were having sex with green monkeys? I mean, that's, and so I think rather than I mean, sometimes you when you hear the criticisms, then you just go, oh, they don't make sense.
I know that they said that you have a problem.
Yes.
You know what?
They've said that a lot. Yes.
And even some psychologists have even agreed on that.
Yes. Some psychologists who work for the state have said I have an issue when I've asked them what it was that I said. Did I say the sky is green, or what particular issue was it that I said, that so that I can explain? Because sometimes I do say I am a little bit, you could say eccentric maybe. I have opinions that are different. And I think you can relate to that. People who have lived a narrow existence and have just had people surrounded by them who everyone agrees with them and they have the same. But yes, the state have said that I have, and they may be right, but they haven't told me what it was that I said that created that impression for them. In this case, I have said that if they had any psychologists that they said that they must bring them, and I'll answer any of the questions, so they haven't brought it up in this matter yet. I do know quite a lot about psychology. I used to work for two psychologists.